Right now, you're probably wearing something that means nothing and everything at the same time. A ring, a chain, a stud in your ear, maybe a bracelet you never take off. You don't think about it much. It's just there. It's just part of how you look, how you feel, maybe how someone else remembers you. But here's what nobody tells you about that object: the impulse behind it. The urge to put something on your body that has no practical function whatsoever is one of the oldest and strangest behaviors in the entire history of our species. Older than farming, older than writing, older than every civilization that has ever risen and collapsed on this planet. And understanding why humans started doing this reveals something that most people never expect. It wasn't vanity. It wasn't beauty. It was survival. To understand what jewelry actually is, you first have to go back to a moment when almost nothing existed. 100,000 years ago, there were no cities, no roads, no governments, no language the way we understand it today. Humans lived in small, roving bands, maybe 20 to 50 people, moving constantly across brutal landscapes in search of food and water. Life expectancy was short. Most hunts failed. Disease moved through communities without warning. And every single day began and ended with the same problem: staying alive. In that world, there was no room for useless things. You didn't carry anything that didn't feed you, protect you, or keep you warm. Every object had a function. Every choice was a survival calculation. Extra weight could slow a migration. Wasted time could mean starvation. The ancient world had no tolerance for decoration. And yet, sometime around 100,000 to 130,000 years ago, humans started making jewelry anyway. In 2004, archaeologists excavating a cave called Blombos Cave on the southern coast of South Africa made a discovery that stopped the scientific community cold. Buried in layers of ancient sediment, they found tiny shells, Nassarius kraussianus, a small marine snail. The shells had been deliberately perforated through the top. They had been strung. They had been worn. And they were at least 75,000 years old. Some estimates push closer to 100,000. Think about what that means. Before the wheel, before agriculture, before any written word had ever been formed, before every empire, every war, every monument, every invention that fills our history books. Somebody was sitting down, carefully boring a hole through a tiny shell, threading it onto something, and wearing it. That is not the behavior of an animal focused purely on survival. That is something else entirely. So the question scientists immediately asked was, why? The obvious answer is beauty. Humans liked how it looked. But that explanation falls apart almost immediately because it doesn't explain why this behavior appeared specifically at this point in human history, and why it appeared with such deliberate, consistent effort. These weren't random shells. The perforations were precise. The shells were often coated with red ochre, a pigment humans were already using to mark objects and surfaces. This wasn't accidental. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. The deeper answer comes from what anthropologists call symbolic thinking. Up until this period in human history, there's very little evidence that humans attached meaning to objects. Tools were tools. Rocks were rocks. A shell was food, then garbage. But somewhere around 100,000 years ago, the human brain crossed a threshold. It began understanding that an object could represent something beyond itself. A shell on a string could mean, I am part of this group. I have status. I am experienced. I am someone worth noticing. I am someone worth trusting. And in a world with no written records, no legal systems, no formal institutions of any kind, that signal was incredibly valuable. Here's the part that changes how you think about the whole thing. In ancient bands of humans, strangers were dangerous. You couldn't know within seconds whether someone approaching your camp was a potential ally or a potential threat. You had no shared language, no shared history, no way to verify intentions quickly, but a visible marker, something worn on the body, could communicate group membership at a glance. If you and I both wear the same shells, we are the same people. You are not a threat. You belong here. Researchers studying modern hunter-gatherer societies have found that group identity markers, tattoos, scarification, distinctive ornaments, often serve exactly this function. They are social technology. They compress enormous amounts of information into a visual signal that a human brain can process in an instant. Jewelry wasn't decoration. It was communication. And once humans started using objects to communicate, everything changed. This is the cognitive leap that separates humans from every other animal on Earth. Other animals use tools. Chimpanzees use sticks to extract termites. Crows drop nuts in front of cars to crack them open. Sea otters use rocks to smash shells. But no other animal has ever been found to attach symbolic meaning to an object. No other species creates something specifically to represent an idea. Identity, belonging, status, memory. That ability. The ability to say this thing stands for something is the foundation of every abstract system humans ever built. Language, religion, money, law, art, mathematics. All of it traces back to the same cognitive shift first visible in those tiny shells. Your brain is running software that those ancient humans invented without knowing what they were building. And here's what that means for the jewelry itself. The first people to wear jewelry weren't doing it because it was pretty. They were doing it because it worked. It communicated identity. It signaled alliances. It marked status within the group. It may have played a role in mate selection. A person who could acquire and craft ornaments was demonstrating skill, resources, and social connections. In a world where your survival depended entirely on being embedded in a reliable group, being recognizable, trustworthy, and high status within that group could literally be the difference between life and death. Vanity wasn't the point. Legibility was. And the behavior never stopped. It just got more elaborate. As human civilization expanded, jewelry evolved with it. Gold replaced shells. Gemstones replaced ochre-painted bone. The materials changed. The craftsmanship escalated. The messages became more complex. Wealth, power, love, grief, faith, loyalty. But the underlying function stayed exactly the same. Every wedding ring ever placed on a finger is doing what those Blombos Cave shells were doing 100,000 years ago. Communicating something that can't be said in words, marking a bond. Saying, this is who I am. This is who I belong to. So look down at whatever you're wearing right now. That ring. That chain. That thing you never take off. You didn't invent that impulse. You inherited it. From people who lived in caves on the edge of the African coast, who figured out that a tiny shell with a hole in it could tell a stranger everything they needed to know about you. They had no writing, no cities, no way of knowing their small discovery would ripple forward across 100,000 years of human history. But it did. And tonight, somewhere in the world, a person is putting on a piece of jewelry before they walk out the door, doing exactly what our ancestors did on a coastline older than civilization itself. They just don't know why yet. But now you do.